Good evening, everybody. This is John Quelch. I'm the Dean of the University of Miami Patty and Allen Herbert Business School, and delighted to be part of this Washington Alumni Relations event, part of our regional engagement strategy at the University of Miami. I want to first of all thank the DC community, the DC Canes community, for hosting this event along with the Johnson Edosomwan Leadership Institute. Tonight we have both the eponymous donor of the Institute, Mr. Edosomwan himself, as well as the director of the Institute, Associate Professor Cheryl Alonso. Cheryl is a great believer in the power of storytelling and leadership, and she's going to be saying a few words about that a little bit later on. We encourage you to submit questions throughout the evening, and I'll attempt to gather those and ask as many as I can in the session a little bit later when we'll have an opportunity for Q&A. We have a very important relationship between our business school and the Leadership Institute that involves an annual lecture, which has featured some very prominent CEOs and business personalities, including, for example, the former chairman of the Board of Trustees of the University, Richard Fain, who is the chairman and CEO of Royal Caribbean. And we also importantly have in this collaboration with the Leadership Institute, the annual University of Miami Herbert Business School leadership competition, which I'll leave to Professor Alonso perhaps to say a few more words about, but it's proven to be a highly effective and highly appealing competition in which our students in teams engage to debate and solve and present solutions to a major crisis problem that's confronting a hypothetical business. I want to turn next, if I may, to introduce Dr. Edosomwan. Johnson is the chairman and senior executive consultant coach at JJA Consultants, his firm. He's chairman and general manager of Johnson A. Edosomwan LLC and group chairman of a company called the Continuous Improvement Company. He holds a BS and an MSIE from the University of Miami and established the Institute with an initial grant to give back to the university and to the community to which he attributes some of his great success. I want to just introduce, before we get into it on a lighter note, a picture that you can see, I think, on the screen now, which is a picture of a shark. The shark did not graduate from the business school, but importantly has been assisted greatly by a team that won the Miami leadership competition that had the opportunity to be a part of a shark tagging expedition with the Rosenstiel School of Marine and Atmospheric Science. And during the expedition, the team named one of the sharks they tagged in honor of the Institute, so that the name of this shark is Jaeli, Jaeli, for the Johnson A. Edosomwan Leadership Institute. Thanks for sharing the shark photograph with us. That's really great. So I'm now going to introduce, if I may, our very important alumnus and distinguished donor and supporter of our school, Dr. Johnson A. Edosomwan. Dr. Edosomwan, would you please take over? Thank you.
Good evening, Dean, and good evening, everyone. And it's a pleasure to be with you all. I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of the experience. And my journey with the University of Miami has been a divine journey. I think God sent me there for a purpose. Since the first day that I went into the university and the last day that I went, I had a very, very successful time. As a student, I was involved in a lot of extracurricular activities. I was the president of the Honor Society. I was chosen to receive the Burgership Fellowship, swap shoes, and many more. And I had a very great time. And professors there were excellent, and they left me a very, very good memory of the university. When we were trying to decide where to put the Leadership Institute, we selected a panel that was chaired by Frank Jones, a vice president of IBM. And we went to 3 universities to try to find out where would be a good location for the university. And unanimously, everybody came back to say, well, given, the University of Miami background and everything that you have said to us, and also what we found as one of the foundations in the University of Miami would be a good place to put the institute. So therefore, I went with the recommendation of the people that were on the search committee at that point. So we have been very, very pleased with the institute. Secondly, when I was at the junior level in the engineering school, a consulting company called Arthur Young and Company at that time, Atlantis, they were looking to hire, students that would be able to work with them. And my dean was saying, well, I don't have anyone for you, but I have a junior student here that can feed the role. So that was what got me involved into consulting. And then they hired me at the junior level and gave me a lot of bucket of money with divine, appointment from God. And I was on my way to success. So you can see the rail that goes from University of Miami to downtown and all that. So we worked on those, the transportation system, now that is already implemented almost about 30 years ago. And and then we worked on also connecting that with the bus system and everything else. So last time I was in Miami, I saw the rail. It was so impressive. I was very, very impressed with the hard work of, what we had done together as a junior, in the engineering school. So I really thank the university for supporting me. And I also thank God for giving me the opportunity to be at the university. My professors were outstanding. Also, I was one of the first people that started the technology management, conference that created now, working with Dr. Khalil, who is now a president in Egypt. So, and at that point, we created the Technology Management Institute now that is worldwide. And then the Productivity and Quality Improvement Conference too with Dr. Sumant. So we've done a lot of things together that I'm very proud of. I am very, very grateful. I have received a tremendous amount of support, from the university, a lot of scholarship, a lot of fellowship, a lot of honors and awards and so forth. And then I went out to Columbia University, from Columbia University to George Washington University. And then since then, it has been a journey that I really appreciated. In terms of why did we, wanted to put the Leadership Institute into University of Miami? It was not just for the University of Miami benefit alone. We believe that the leaders of the future are the children of today. Every organization that I've been to several countries, whether it's the Middle East or Africa or Europe, wherever it is. My consulting work has taken me through tremendous amount of experience in all of these various countries. Everywhere you go, leadership is an issue. So we said, well, how do we develop those leaders? In my work with the United States government, we have developed a lot of competencies, some of them 21 competencies, some of them 18 or whatever they are. And then we find out that those things were making a huge difference. And then we looked at the curriculum that the University of Miami was offering. It was very sound. And then we went through a lot of it. There was a process of delay, with all the deans that was changed. But I must say this, that with the current dean and also Dr. Alonso, oh my goodness, she was sent also by God to lead this institute, and she has done an outstanding job. And she has brought a lot of, very well-known speakers, including the Treasurer of the United States. I always try to go to the annual lecture series, and I have good time when I am there. The last one I was on was with the one that the Treasurer of the United States, spoke. She did a fantastic job as well. So the Institute was to develop the leaders of tomorrow. It was to be able to be the best practices of what is in leadership. And then to be able to look at some of the problems that we are having. We have not done very well in leading our organizations and in directing them in the way that where they need to focus on all of the various issues, from morality to issue of integrity, honesty, and all of these other things that are very key. And then when I had a chance to have a chat with the current dean, the dean laid out, I think it was about 5 different areas that was very, very unique. And it was in line with my thoughts. It was in line with what we were finding in the industry. And I believe that the Leadership Institute was geared for success. So I want to thank, the University of Miami for giving me a good start. And I also want to thank God Almighty for actually leading me there to go to the University of Miami, because it gave me a good start. And then for the other universities that were not selected, it's not because they weren't good, but it's just because University of Miami, turned out to be, my first home, and it turned out to be one that created, based on the evaluation committee, the best place, for this, institute to be, and it was the right choice. So I want to thank you all for taking the time to listen to what I have to say. But I also want you all to congratulate, Dr. Alonso, because she has done a fantastic job, since she has been the director of the institute. With that, let me introduce her, because I think she's the next speaker now. She is an associate professor of professional practice at the University of Miami Herbert Business School. She teaches organizational behavior, human resource management, leadership at the undergraduate and graduate level and in the executive program. She is the academic director of the Johnson Edosomwan Leadership Institute and the director of the Masters in Leadership program. So one of the things that I saw in the University of Miami that was very good, yes, a concentration on leadership, which means people now have they can get a master's degree in this area. And some of the people are doing also their doctorate dissertation on some of the areas as well. She has been a recipient of many awards, including, the Excellence in Teaching Award, Research, Mentor of the Year Award, Outstanding Review Award from the Academy of Management, and U.S. Army, recognition as well. I want us to receive Dr. Alonso now, who has done an excellent job in not only promoting the institute, but teaching the student, and then making sure that University of Miami and the alumni are also very proud, with what she does. Thank you so much, for taking the time to listen to me.
So welcome. Hello, everyone. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Dr. Edosomwan, and thank you to the Dean. First of all, I want to tell you a little bit about my own story. My background is quite a bit different than most of my colleagues. I actually started my career as a nurse, and I was working my way up through administration, moved from Chicago to Miami, and came to the University of Miami Executive MBA program. At that time, I became a vice president of a hospital. I was a vice president for many years, and eventually my family got in the way and I decided to step down. At that time, the university invited me to teach. So I was totally shocked. I never in a million years dreamed I would be teaching at a major university. Eventually, I did go back for my PhD. My PhD is actually in medical leadership. So I took half of my coursework at the business school and half of my coursework at the medical school with the MD PhDs. And I guess they liked me, and I love this as I have been here for more than 20 years. So it's my pleasure today to talk to you about telling stories and how you can inspire others through storytelling. So I want to ask you, what do these 4 companies have in common? Nike, Microsoft, Costco, and FedEx. No, I know they're all dealing with coronavirus, but that's not what I was getting at. Actually, all of these companies have professional storytellers on board. So can you imagine that your job is, oh, I'm a storyteller for Nike. So storytelling is very important. So we tell a story in our entire life, and our life is built on many different stories, from where we were born, where we were raised, where we went to school, yes, to the U, and if we have a family built along the way. So it's very important to tell stories. And why do we tell stories? First of all, stories are very motivating. And we can inspire others by telling stories. Also, stories are good for recall. They actually find that people are 20 times more likely to remember facts if it's put into a story. Also, stories are good for many different types of learners. So they're good for all types of people. And lastly, it's a very good way for transmitting the corporate culture. So it is a very, very critical component of corporate messaging. So when you tell a story, it's good to get as many of the senses as you can into the story. It's remembered better and becomes more inspiring. So I use Albert Einstein's words, one picture is worth 1,000 words. So you really want to try to paint a story for others. So I'd like to give you a few pointers for success in storytelling. First of all, you want to find sources of interest and joy. You want to make sure your story is interesting. Boring stories will never make it. You want to be inspired, and being inspired yourself helps inspire others. Next, you want to turn your stories into positive energy. You want that wow factor. When you're looking at a story, you're trying to inspire action through the story. So start by gathering the facts. What kind of facts do I want to talk about? What is the motivation? What action do I want people to take from this story? And in the stories, conflict is okay. And even a bad story is okay, as long as there's a lesson learned and the outcome is positive. So I could give examples of, for instance, 911. At 911, many companies are remembered for how they responded. How did they react? Another example I could give is about Bloomingdale's. And if anyone's familiar with Miami, Bloomingdale's at the Falls recently lost their lease after 35 years. And I'm a shopper. I love Bloomingdale's. So of course I went to their final sales. And as I walked through the stores, all of the employees just raved about working there. Even though they were losing their jobs, all they had to say was good, positive stories. In fact, many of them told me that after Hurricane Andrew, the store was closed for a year and a half to be rebuilt. And at that time, Bloomingdale's either found them other positions within the community or paid them full time for the entire time they were closed. So how wonderful is that, that now they're losing their jobs, but still have nothing but positive things to say. So it is okay to have a bad story as long as you have a good outcome. Next, ask yourself the critical questions regarding what message you wish to portray. And always use your values. You want to emphasize your leadership and being positive and your strong values. So lastly, remember to paint the picture. So storytelling needs to be relatable, relevant, emotional, and with emotional, there's actually a leadership thing called emotional contagion. And this is where the emotions of the leader are sent down to the followers. So if you have positive emotions as a leader, it makes your followers more positive. And lastly, you want to be engaging. So make it memorable, make it unique, make it one of a kind, and then you want to be imaginative and creative. So I want to ask you, how many of you consider yourself creative? Now, I'm sure a few of you raised your hand and said, yes, yes, I'm creative. I'm sure others of you have felt, no, no, I'm not creative at all. So they have found through research that you can become more creative. So I'm going to give you a few creativity boosters. First of all, I'd like all of you to raise your left hand and clench it in a fist. Clench, clench. Nope, it's not to punch anyone. What you're actually doing when you clench your left fist is you're activating the right part of your brain, which controls your creativity and your memory. So you're improving creativity and memory just by merely clenching your left fist. Next, raise your eyebrows. Now, I don't like to do this one because the wrinkles are getting a little too pronounced, but Richard Friedman from the University of Maryland actually showed that broadening your perspective by raising your eyebrows and making your perspective broadened actually sparks originality and a greater quantity of ideas. Excuse me. Next, we have this one lonely orange M&M amongst the sea of green. So this picture shows the odd man out. What they found through research is that looking at an image where there's an odd man out, something unusual, that this actually had participants generate ideas that were actually judged 25% more creative than if you looked at pictures which depicted conformity. So look at pictures that are out there. And then the rubrics cube. This is one of my favorite studies. And this were studies done at NYU. They found that playing with a geometric puzzle or a stress ball actually sparks clearer, more creative thinking. So what they did was tested all of these executives for their creativity. Then they had a control group which just went about business as normal. And then the experimental group were actually given some type of executive toy on their desk by their boss. They had no idea what they were studying. They found that those that had the executive toys were more creative in their thinking and much clearer thinking. In fact, they also recognized this now that we're in COVID-19 with all of these Zoom meetings. If you're playing with an executive toy or even using the toggle on a zipper, pulling it up and down, that the executives actually pay attention to the meeting better. So you might wanna give all your employees some executive toys. Then we cannot neglect Einstein. So Einstein, Salvador Dali, Leonardo da Vinci, Margaret Thatcher, Winston Churchill, and several US presidents actually used naps. They took naps to spark creativity. My favorite is Salvador Dali, who used to recline in a chair holding a set of keys in his hand, and he would take a nap. As soon as he got into a deeper sleep state, his hand would fall open, the keys would fall to the ground and make a loud noise, waking him up. Between this state of sleep and wakefulness is when he felt most creative. Einstein also felt this state between sleep and wakefulness sparked this greater creativity. So go ahead, take a nap. And this last picture is of, with the headphones, is that listening to music. They find that listening to music at 70 decibels, and this is the sound level of a busy cafe, is the optimal noise level for creativity. And researchers at the University of British Columbia found that this leads to some distraction, that you could think of things out of the box, but not too much distraction that you can't concentrate. So why is storytelling more important now? So coronavirus is the story of the moment. COVID-19 is the thread of all stories for the immediate, near-term, and long-term future. The COVID-19 stories will be told for years to come. So you want to make your COVID-19 story a great one. This is a really, really important time to demonstrate your values. For the company, you want to make sure that the brand's core values are those ideas that lead in your story. And you want to make hopeful, positive stories. This is the time you want to make lemonade out of those lemons. So what's your story? So it's really important now to be building your own story. You could think back and think of many stories about yourself and build these stories. Think of a few great stories that really characterize you, your values, and your leadership. So you want to build the story. You want to, first of all, set the stage. It's really important for leaders is your personal story. They actually find that storytelling is part of authentic leadership. People and companies are really seeking authentic leaders in today's environment. And your own story is part of your authenticity of a leader. So you want to set the stage for your story, consider your values, create the inspiration. If I tell this story, what is my end line? What do I want to inspire others to do? So you want to build the plot and always stick the landing so others will go out in a motivated fashion. So now I would like to tell you a few great stories. The first story is about the salty donut, and this is on the local front in Miami. This is a small business. It's a rather new business. They are connected with the University of Miami. I think one of the members is an alum. And as you can see just from this picture, that is their storefront in the Wynwood. They're known as an artisanal donut shop. As you can see, some of those delectable flavors the picture's depicting. As you can see, they're very decadent, very, very good donuts. Well, as soon as coronavirus came and hit Miami, the salty donut hit the ground. What they were doing was delivering donuts to the frontline workers, nurses, and doctors. You know, for years to come, people are going to remember that, oh, when I was working, they sent us donuts. Also, their employees are going to say for years to come, oh, remember when the coronavirus and we went and delivered the donuts to the front lines. So they really made a good story for themselves. Another good story is the Connor Group. Larry Connor is the CEO and founder of this real estate investment firm. And he called his employees to a Zoom meeting for an update on the coronavirus. Only it was not an update. He was able to make $1.6 million in the volatile stock market. He took all the money out and at this meeting told the employees that they had two important core values: do the right thing and people count. So he took this entire $1.6 million and divided it amongst all the employees. There were 262 employees. The part-time employees that were new to the company got $6,000, and those, depending on their longevity in the company, many got even much more. So I'm sure they'll be telling that wonderful COVID-19 story for years to come. So I also want to tell you a couple stories. And this is the Nursing and Health Sciences, School of Nursing and Health Studies Simulation Hospital. I took my business school students that were in a training and development class to see the simulation hospital. I told you my background is in executive healthcare. So I was expecting some great simulations. Wow, was I wrong. I got there, there's a 5-story hospital, a full functioning simulation hospital. It's utterly amazing, from the babies crying and breathing to the adults actually having emergencies. There's a control room where they can inject emergencies to see that the staff and the training, people in training actually know how to respond. Also, another story is our Carol Sofer indoor practice facility. And we're one of the few universities in the world to have an indoor practice facility that is so fabulous that the 49ers actually practice there for the Super Bowl. So another great story. And our last story I want to tell is the University of Miami Shark Research and Conservation Program. As Dean Quelch did point out, we have the Miami Leadership Challenge, which is a 2-day crisis simulation. It's an amazing program. the students are actually faced with a real crisis and have to respond as executives. So the winning team last year had the pleasure of going along with the shark researchers and actually doing research on sharks. As you saw, we did tag one shark that we named for the Leadership Institute, named Jaylee. And I actually got to take the biopsy of that shark. This was an amazing experience for me. It gave me another story in my pocket. And I have to say, my entire family was very envious that I got to experience such a cool adventure. So I want to give you a little homework before we go. So first of all, I hope you were a little inspired by this. I want you to think about your stories now, especially with coronavirus. Also, I'm sorry for any of you that may have been affected negatively by the coronavirus and may be seeking jobs at this unfortunate time. But I do want to tell you that storytelling in a job interview is what gets the job. So discover and tell your own personal story. Ask a colleague about their story so you could share yours. Build 3 great stories and always have these available in your back pocket. Also, they find that deliberate practice with these stories makes them better. Also, lastly, for your homework, I want you to build a story for your job with a corporate or business purpose. And remember, always keep those values in mind. Remember that great stories happen to those who can tell them. They actually have found that reading to children with expression actually leads to a higher IQ in the children than those that are read stories without expression. So building your own story, make sure that you make your story count. So thank you, and I will turn over to Dean Quelch for any questions you may have.
Cheryl, we've got a number of questions that are coming in, and I'd love to have more questions coming in from our alumni and friends in the audience. But one of the questions we have, if I can just consult my crib sheet here, is how can storytelling help us to change careers? I think you've sort of touched on this, but can you give any examples of people you've mentored who've had that particular experience where they've been able to take a story about something they did in their life or experienced in their life and exhibited qualities that enable them to switch from one career path to another?
I think we see this often when someone has an aha moment, that something happened in their career that all of a sudden led them to something different, something that they weren't expecting. I think also entrepreneurs, this often an idea is sparked in their mind, get that creativity going. Maybe they weren't thinking of being an entrepreneur, and all of a sudden this idea comes along. They tell the story and realize, yes, this is something I can really make happen. So think of those moments that are sparked and how can that story help lead you in a different direction. As I shared my story, that I went from healthcare executive to a university setting in a business school, totally unexpected. And certainly my healthcare stories, I think, really lend to being a good professor, that people can really relate that, yes, I have been through these executive challenges. So teaching the theory along with the experience makes for, I think, a better way of teaching that I can really connect.
Mm-hmm. Interesting question here. Visual cues are 90% of what we respond to, and verbal cues are 10%. So what's the role of video, given social media, in our ability to effectively tell stories to reach a large number of people these days?
Really interesting question. Thank you for that question. I think, and now we're all on video with Zoom. So I think if you can certainly have your photo, you're able to see some of the expressions. So certainly this helps connect in terms of your message. But yes, I have a friend who's blind, and I often wonder how his communication has changed because he's not getting those personal cues. So certainly if you can have a live video, you want to make sure you're using expression in your voice, your tone, your facial expression, and even with your hands. I'm Italian, so we often speak with our hands, and certainly it is important to show those. Certainly showing your professionalism, that people are getting instant impressions when they see you as well.
Given that given that we're so subject to distraction these days, is it important to be able to package the story in a very short space of time, or is there still an audience for the long, drawn-out mystery with the twist at the end?
I think shorter stories are better. If it gets too long, your recall is going to decline and your interest will decline. Once in a while, we get one of those great stories that can go on and on. But yes, a good point. I would recommend the stories be shorter, especially when we're in Zoom meetings.
Is it important not to fall into the big fish trap, whereby you tell the same personal story multiple times, but the size of the fish grows considerably with every repeat performance?
Yes, so you do have to remember to keep the stories honest, so you don't want them to grow. And you make a good point. If you have these 3 great stories, but you tell the same stories over and over to the same audience, they can get a bit boring. So I guess in that light, you might have to keep changing your 3 great stories. But as you go on in your timeline, you're always making and creating good stories for yourself.
It's a very interesting question, challenging question, but a very interesting question. Can you say a little bit about how non-minorities can amplify the storytelling of minority voices?
Wow, interesting question. Thank you for that. So certainly we know that a lot of biases exist. In fact, yesterday I was at an international women's panel with a professor from Harvard, and really it was about women getting ahead. And really we have these biases that are unintentional. So certainly with recognizing our biases and recognizing that minorities often can't get ahead, being able to help push their stories to the forefront, I think will help with things like discrimination and biases. Even researchers who study these biases and felt they weren't biased find that they themselves have some biases. they say that until you really can change these innate biases is when you can become non-discriminatory, but it's very difficult to get to that point. So I think it is good to help those that may not be the predominant group tell their stories to help get them ahead.
Great answer to a challenging question. Several people are complimenting your positive energy, Cheryl. I think maybe taking a nap is not something that anyone on this call is going to be doing, at least until we finish the session. One further question, perhaps, before we shift to Matthew Piscatelli, who is going to talk a little bit about the Canes community. Sort of an interesting personal question, I think. If you could rewrite one of your own stories from your own personal life, you know, what would it be and why?
That is an extremely hard question for me, because I always feel, I always say to my family that my real life is better than my dreams, that I feel like I could just pinch myself that I have a wonderful husband, a great family, 3 wonderful children. So I don't know if I would rewrite anything. I'm a positive person. I think I would rewrite this coronavirus, that it never came to be.
All right. Just one final question. Someone's asking, can you think of any particular executive, chief executive, who has been, in your mind, a consistent, good storyteller, and who has basically brought storytelling into their own personal success formula?
Well, I think after our leadership lecture last year with Jovita Carranza,
yes,
I think she became really an idol to me. And I think she tells her life story and how it got her where she is. So I would use her as my example. And as we know that she is now the director of the Small Business Administration and is on the cabinet. And going before the coronavirus, she was unanimously by Democrats and Republicans supported, which I think is extremely rare in a political environment like now. So I wish her the best. She is a Cane, so
yes.
Maybe that adds to my idolization of her.
All right, thank you. And do we know yet who's going to be doing the leadership lecture, the next one, or is that still up in the air?
Well, we did have Carnival Cruises, but that kind of went down with coronavirus. But I actually have several speakers that would like to speak. It's a little easier for us actually to do it by Zoom. So I think I might do a couple this year.
Good, super. Okay, well, thank you so much, Cheryl, and really appreciate you coming on and helping us motivate and reconnect with our Washington alumni. And so now, thanks to Cheryl, and it's over to Matthew, who is going to say a few words on behalf of the DC Canes community. Matthew?
Sure. I just wanted to thank Dean Quelch and Dr. Alonso. I think we all appreciated your insight and trying to take some time to reflect on this. I know I've been trying to do that. I live with my brother, so we've been thinking about the stories we're going to be sharing with our children, and I think it's interesting too to sort of share your experiences with this so far. And I think it's already had quite an impact on my life and a lot of the people that I've shared it with, and that communal spirit of everyone having their own story. So I also want to thank the university and the alumni office and the Office of Engagement for putting on this event. We look forward to having some more. I'm the president of the DC Canes community, and I would encourage some of the other members who are on my board to introduce themselves as well in the chat. So I think my vice president, Mike Michelle, should be in here as well. The secretary, Eric O'Toole, who's been on the board for a while as well. Benjamin Lowy, who's our president-elect, and our past president, Jennifer Del Toro. So yeah, I see Mike already posted in there, but we're looking forward to hosting some more events, hopefully in person, whenever that is allowed. But for now, I think this event went very well, and we're looking forward to doing some more Zoom events. If you want to be more involved, there are a lot of ways that you can reach us. We have a Facebook group that we post all our events in. We also are pretty active on other social media sites as well, like Instagram and Twitter. So if whichever one of those you prefer, feel free to follow us there or join that group, and you'll be apprised of all the events that we'll be having in the future. And yeah, I think you've seen Erica and Mike have posted in there, so don't be shy if anyone else has any questions on how to get involved. You can also shoot an email to me at washingtondccanes@miami.edu. Again, that's just washingtondccanes@miami.edu, and I'll comment it into the chat as well. But we look forward to everyone, getting involved with the DC Canes, whether it's remotely or, in person once that allows. And we'd love to connect with you. And if you have ideas for events or anything of that nature, feel free to reach out.
Thank you again, Cheryl and Dr. Edosomwan for being with us this evening. And thanks for all you and your team are doing on behalf of the University of Miami and the DC area. We appreciate it very much. Thank you.